What's up guys, in today's video we're looking at two very close competitors in the Uptempo / daily trainer market. Today we're doing a shootout between the Adidas Boston 12 and the On Cloudflow 4. Let's get into it. My friends, this video is in partnership with the team over at Roadrunner Sports, so I will be providing links to both these shoes that you can buy at Roadrunner Sports in the show notes below. However, just so you know, Roadrunner Sports doesn't have any editorial control over this video, and all the thoughts and opinions are my own. So let's jump right in. Let's get started with price, as we always do. The Adidas Boston 12 will cost you $160. The On Cloudflow 4 will also cost you $160. Pretty comparable so far, right? The On Cloudflow 4 has 31mm in the heel, 23mm in the forefoot for an 8mm drop. The Adidas Boston 12 has 38mm in the heel, 31 in the forefoot for a 7mm drop. 7mm drop, 8mm drop. But just in case you missed it, the highest point in the heel on the Cloudflow 4 is the same as the lowest point, the forefoot, in the Adidas Boston 12. So depending on how you like your running shoes to feel, how much cushion you like underfoot, could depend on which one of these you prefer so far. Now right now we're just talking about numbers, so in a minute when we talk about ride, we'll put these stack heights into context. And spoiler, it may not be what you're thinking. In a US men's size 9, the Boston 12 tips the scale at 9.5 ounces or 269 grams. However, in my size, a US men's size 13, it tips the scale at 11 ounces or 312 grams. Now the On Cloudflow 4 in a US men's size 8.5 tips the scale at 8.3 ounces or 235 grams. Now it's not really comparable right now because the Adidas and On are using different sample sizes, but the Cloudflow 4 in my size, a US men's size 13, tips the scale at 10.7 ounces or 302 grams. That's 302 grams versus 312 grams. Not a big difference, but a difference. So let's dig a little deeper into both shoes. We're going to start with the Adidas Boston 12 and we're going to start at the top. We're going to work our way down. Now if I hold this up, you can see how very thin this is around the heel collar right at the top. Just below the surface of the heel collar, there is a little bolster padding that goes not quite all the way around. It ends right in the middle where your heel goes, but on each side we have a little bolster padding. And there is no padding right here on the back. The heel counter, well, it does have a heel counter, but it's very narrow. You can actually feel that heel counter right inside and it prevents you from pushing it down at the back. But if you squeeze from the sides, it feels like there's nothing there. The Adidas Boston 12 is using a very lightweight mesh upper, and my friends, it is super breathable. Absolutely no issues with breathability in the Boston 12. As far as overlays go, we have a little bit of plastic or TPU overlay coming around the toe bumper, of course running up the eyelet chain just to give those laces a little extra support when you cinch them down. We actually have an underlay on both sides, the lateral side and the medial side, right here, right above the midsole, and that's just making sure the upper keeps its shape. And then we've got these overlays right here on the back, just giving the heel a little extra support, a little extra rigidity, again helping it just stand up. The tongue on the Boston 12 is super thin. It's like a very thin piece of felt. We do have a lace loop right in the middle, stopping the tongue from moving around. Now the tongue is not gusseted on the Boston 12, but if you look inside, you are going to see these pieces of felt. It's the same material as the tongue. Basically, they're just midfoot bands, and they come around on each side from here down to about the midsole, and that's just so when you cinch the laces down, it gives you a nice lockdown across your midfoot, and it works well. Now I do wish the Boston 12 had a gusseted tongue. When tongues are this thin, I just find that having them gusseted makes it a little easier to put my foot into it. I did find when I put my foot into the Boston 12, sometimes it required a little bit of adjustment because this very thin tongue kind of bunched up just a little bit. Also, the Boston 12 does have a very race-inspired fit. Boston 12 is of course going to be the training partner to the Adios Pro 3, but the Boston 12 is not a race shoe. This is a training shoe every day, but still, I felt the same kind of issues putting my foot into it as I do with some race shoes. You know how they're just a little tighter around the heel collar, it's tough to get your foot in, but as soon as you get your foot in, it feels pretty good. Coming down to the outsole, the Boston 12 has two midsole foams. We have Light Strike 2.0 here in the heel, and then we have Light Strike Pro, which runs from a very thin layer in the heel all the way up to the front where Light Strike Pro is the predominant foam. Now the Light Strike 2.0 is just an improvement over regular Light Strike. It's a little lighter, it's a little more responsive, it's still an EVA foam, and then the Light Strike Pro is Adidas's PIBA-based foam. This is what you're going to see in their race shoes. Coming down to the outsole, we've got a good amount of continental rubber, good coverage on the front, good amount of rubber here on the back, and then in the middle we have this void where you can see the energy rods. Now just like the Light Strike 2.0, these are energy rods 2.0, and they are glass fiber rods. Okay, let's move over and talk about some of the materials on the On Cloudflow 4. We don't have much padding on the On Cloudflow 4 around the heel collar, but we have a lot more compared to the Adidas Boston 12. If we look at this from the top, this appears much more like a daily trainer, although as I mentioned in my full review of the On Cloudflow 4, this is very minimal compared to a normal daily trainer. But it could also be because the padding is also a little more towards the top than it is on the Adidas. Remember, the Boston 12 had that bolster just a little bit further down into the heel collar. When I put my finger in and kind of feel around the On Cloudflow floor, I can see that this is also a bolster. So the padding is just on the top of the heel collar. And then when I put my finger in, I can feel how my heel would seat into it, and that padding around the top of the heel collar is just going to lock me in nicely. The heel counter is, well, it's not too rigid. I can press it down if I really push, but there's something there. As far as the upper goes, the On Cloudflow 4 is using a very lightweight woven upper, and I really like this upper for the reason that it doesn't look especially breathable. Now look, if I don't know how well you can see this on this camera, but if I hold both these up, to me at least, it seems like I can see right through the upper on the Boston 12. On the On Cloudflow 4, it's very difficult to see through. In fact, I can't see through it at all, leading me to believe that this is a slightly thicker upper. Guys, it's not. It is very thin and very breathable. I'm a runner down here in Florida where it's warm a lot of the time. I haven't had any issues with my feet overheating in the Cloudflow 4. As far as overlays go, it's pretty much the same. We have some coming around the outside of the heel collar, a little bit right here on the back. The normal reinforcements coming along the eyelet chain. Again, we do have a little bit of reinforcement, the underlay coming around just above the foam, and of course that's going to be there for the same reason as on the Boston 12. The tongue on the Cloudflow 4 is very thin. It's very felt-like, very much like the Boston 12, and it's also very aerated. You can see the holes kind of laser cut into the tongue. Now the tongue on the Cloudflow 4 is gusseted, and it does have a lace loop. I didn't experience any issues with the tongue migrating during my run, and it was a lot easier to put my foot into the Cloudflow 4. Just as a comparison, remember I said how the Boston 12 had kind of a race-like fit and it was difficult to put my foot in? I didn't have that same problem with the Cloudflow 4. It fits very much like a traditional daily trainer. And by that, I mean it's easy to put on. Now, if we come down to the midsole on the On Cloudflow 4, On is using two different formulations of their Helion Superfoam. So it's a dual density setup, and in my colorway, it's very easy to see. We've got this green layer right on top. This is going to be a little softer, and then the white layer right here, and you can see this Cloud Tech patterns on the bottom layer of midsole foam. This is going to be just slightly firmer. Kind of promotes that road feeling that we like, especially when we're trying to pick up the pace. Now, let's come down to the outsole. Now, On isn't using any name brand rubber like Continental rubber on the Adidas, but there seems to be plenty of outsole rubber right here on the front, the forefoot strikers, or when you roll through your gait cycle and toe off. And then again, right here at the back, you can see there's a little bit more on the lateral heel side than there is on the medial heel side. And that's obviously because that's where our foot strikes first, at least if you're a heel striker, like me, which is evident by looking at this wear pattern. Okay, let's talk about fit, because there's just a couple different things. Now, I did already mention how the Adidas was a little tougher to put on than the Cloudflow 4, and I think that's mainly because of the materials used and the fit that they're going for. It's not that the Cloudflow 4 doesn't fit like a Uptempo daily trainer. That's exactly what it fits like. It's just the Adidas Boston 12 fits a little more like a race shoe. Now, that's not necessarily a good thing unless you think it is. Personally, I don't want a shoe to fit like a race shoe unless I'm racing in it. I'm all about efficiency. I want to put the shoes on and go. But one of the biggest differences that I found in these shoes, except for the ride, is the toe boxes. Now, I'm going to hold up both of these shoes, and I don't know how they look next to each other, but I did find with my admittedly fairly narrow feet that the Boston 12 just fit a little narrower in the toe box than the Cloudflow 4 did. I found that On Cloudflow 4 fit my foot very well. It felt like I had plenty of room in the toe box, and in the Boston 12, I did find that on my little toe, I did feel a little bit of pressure right here on the outside, which leads me to believe it's just a little too narrow for my feet. If you have run in either of these shoes, I'd love your feedback. I'd love to see if you have run into the same thing as me. Another thing I noticed with the upper is that if I hold up the Boston 12, you can see right on the toe, specifically right where my big toe would hit, you can see that it's kind of worn away from the inside. The On Cloudflow 4, the upper seems to be holding up remarkably well. So as far as build quality goes, I'm going to have to give it to the Cloudflow 4 on this one. Let's just do a little comparison of the outsoles. Now, I'm not sure how well you guys can see this here, but I do have quite a bit of wear right here on the lateral heel of the Boston 12. And then again, I also have a little bit of wear here on the lateral heel of the Cloudflow 4. But what's most concerning on the Cloudflow 4 is up here on my forefoot. I'm seeing quite a bit of wear right up on my forefoot, and that's a little unusual for me. Got to say that yes, I'm seeing a little bit of wear on the Boston 12 on my forefoot, but not nearly as much as on my forefoot of the Cloudflow 4. In comparison, I'm seeing a little more wear on my heel of the Boston 12 than I am on the Cloudflow 4. But that heel rub that I see, that is something that I expect on all my shoes that I run in. And if you're wondering, this exposed midsole here, I'm really not seeing any wear on that. But this rubber is a little concerning. So as far as longevity, at least as far as outsole rubber longevity, I'm going to give it to the Continental rubber on the Adidas Boston 12. I don't know, maybe maybe On could put just a tad more rubber, but then it's going to raise the weight. I don't know, maybe a different compound, a harder compound, but then it's going to change how the shoe rides. I don't know what the answer is. So my prediction for longevity is, I don't know. Look, you're going to be able to get 400 miles at least in both these shoes. I think the Cloudflow 4 is going to be in pretty bad shape after 400 miles, but again, total speculation. Haven't got 400 miles in either of these shoes. But now the most important part. The most important part as to why you buy a running shoe is the ride. And the Boston 12 and the Cloudflow 4 are both Uptempo daily trainers. These are made for picking up the pace in your training. And I didn't mention it until now, but the On Cloudflow 4 does have a speedboard. Now it is a nylon speedboard and it's going to be between these two formulations of their Helion Superfoam, and that is going to work in much the same way that the Energy Rods 2.0 do in the Boston 12. So actually I did enjoy the ride in both these shoes. I did like how when I was transitioning from heel to toe, I did like how this Light Strike Pro felt. And when I say I liked how it felt a little differently from this Light Strike in the back. Although I wouldn't call it a snappy ride. I wouldn't call it an inspiring ride. And even with the Energy Rods 2.0 that kind of run up like this, following the metatarsals of your foot, I didn't really notice anything different from the Energy Rods that I wouldn't expect from an unplated or unrodded shoe. However, the Boston 12 does feel good on most runs. Once my foot was in, it felt pretty comfortable, except for once in a while when I'd get this little pressure, this little hot spot on my little toe. But as far as the ride goes, it was certainly comfortable. It just wasn't really inspiring, you know? Then we've got the On Cloudflow 4. And look, when I first got this shoe, I was a little concerned just because I'm used to seeing higher stack heights than what we have on the Cloudflow 4. I never once felt that I wasn't getting enough protection from this midsole. In fact, the Cloudflow 4 really is a lovely balance between softness and firmness. I didn't really have anything to complain about when I'm running in the Boston 12. It's only when I put these shoes head to head and I start thinking about the differences that I do notice that I prefer the slightly, very slightly softer ride in the Cloudflow 4. Also, the nylon speedboard in the Cloudflow 4 creates a nice feeling of snap. Now, it's not so rigid and so snappy that it's a race day shoe. It's not. Much like this is the training partner to the Adidas Pro 3, the Cloudflow 4 is a training partner to the Cloud Boom Echo 3. When I compare the Energy Rods 2.0 in here with the nylon speedboard in the Cloudflow 4, the Cloudflow 4 just gives me a little more feeling of wanting to move faster. Like it's given me a little more get up and go in my run. Of course, that is going to be a product of the internal support structures that we've got, the speedboard and the rods, but also the rocker. When I hold them up like this, they look fairly similar, but you know what? I've got to say that the toe spring on the Cloudflow 4 is just slightly more aggressive than the Boston 12. So all in all, if I had to do it all again, if I had to buy one or the other, I would probably go with the On Cloudflow 4. However, remember, this is just my opinion, and running shoes do feel different to different runners. So whereas my foot shape and my weight and my running dynamics maybe suit the Cloudflow 4 better, there's going to be a lot of people that prefer the Boston 12. Perhaps if you have an even narrower foot than me, you might find the toe box in the Boston 12 nice and roomy. I don't know. But for now, for two Uptempo daily trainers that are exactly the same price, that have a very similar drop, they're comparable in a lot of ways. So you really have to get into the details, start digging around at the small elements to see what you prefer. Guys, it's Matt B. This has been my review of the Adidas Boston 12 versus the On Cloudflow 4. Be kind, be happy, run well. I'll see you in a couple of days.